In every home, in every car and on every radio, a song is played. När vi gräver guld i USA. When we dig for gold in the USA. Written by Swedish pop trio Glenmark Eriksson Strömstedt. Official fight song for the Sweden national team at the '94 FIFA World Cup in the United States. The title refers to two things: the 19th century American gold rushes and the gold medals awarded to World Cup winners. The song topped the Swedish charts for 40 weeks, won Song of the Year in '94. It became the sound of Swedish summers, because in '94 Sweden went to America to dig for gold, and they found bronze. Welcome back to the World Cup Chronicles. Sweden were not supposed to do anything at the '94 World Cup. They were drawn into a group of Brazil, Russia and Cameroon, playing in unbearable heat, in Pasadena, in Detroit and in Dallas. But they had something. Thomas Brolin, the babyface playmaker from Parma. Kenneth Andersson, tall striker from Lille. Martin Dahlin, goalscorer from Mönchengladbach. Thomas Ravelli, the madcap goalkeeper from Gothenburg. And a young Henrik Larsson with dreadlocks, just starting his career. They drew against Cameroon 2-2. They beat Russia 3-1 and drew against Brazil 1-1. They advanced to the knockout stages. And in the round of 16, they beat Saudi Arabia 3-1. But in the quarterfinals, they came against a tricky opponent, Romania. This was not just any Romania side. This was their golden generation. Hagi, Dumitrescu, Raduciou. It took 78 minutes for the first goal to be scored. Thomas Brolin scored a brilliant free kick and Sweden were up 1-0. But after 10 minutes, Romania equalized and they were headed for extra time. And in extra time, Romania went ahead 2-1 and Stefan Schwarz was sent off. Down to 10 men. Down by 2-1 and with only a few minutes to go. And here Kenneth Andersson rose above everyone and headed in 2-2. And we head for penalties. Sweden won 5-4 and were into the semi-finals. Here they were up against Brazil, but this time Brazil was too good for them. A single goal from Romario made sure that Brazil went to the finals. But there was still the third place match to be played. And against Bulgaria, Brolin scored, Håkan Mild scored, Henrik Larsson scored, and Kenneth Andersson scored, all in the first half. Sweden 4, Bulgaria 0. And Sweden won bronze. And back home, the entire country celebrated. När vi gräver guld i USA played on repeat. They had gone to America to dig for gold, but they had found bronze. Yet, it felt like gold. And for decades, Swedish football lived in the shadows of '94. Every World Cup, Swedish media would look back at '94, thinking, why can't we do that again? Because at the World Cup in 2006, they were knocked out in the round of 16 by Germany. At 2010 and 2014 World Cup, they failed to qualify. In 2018, they were knocked out by England in the quarterfinals. And in 2022, they failed to qualify again. And the feeling in Sweden was that they were going further and further away from ever participating in the World Cup. '94 was the peak, and everything since has been in decline, except for one man. Sweden has a cultural law called Jantelagen, or the law of Jante. This social law states that you're not better than others. You're not supposed to stand out, and the collective goes before the individual. Humility, modesty, and honesty. This is Sweden, and this is how Sweden have worked. And then there was Zlatan. I came, I saw, I conquered. Zlatan doesn't do auditions. Only God knows who is better than me. Complete violation and opposite of Jantelagen. Arrogant, confident and individualistic. Everything a Swede is not supposed to be. And yet, he became the greatest Swedish football player of all time. Zlatan was born in Malmö, Sweden on October 3rd, 1981, in an area called Rosengård. an immigrant-heavy neighborhood in Malmö. A neighborhood associated with crime, underdevelopment and poverty. And yet, this is where Zlatan grew up. His father washed dishes at restaurants and later would work at constructions on roads. And his mother worked as a cleaner in office buildings. And at 15 years old, Zlatan considered quitting football to work at the docks in Malmö. But he kept playing. And in 2001, Zlatan left Malmö for Ajax. He was loved in Malmö and the surrounding area, where people said he was the next big thing. But in the rest of Sweden, people really hated him. He was routinely booed by fans in Stockholm and Gothenburg. They didn't believe that he would amount to anything, that he was just a cocky, arrogant kid. But worse than the boos was the racism. Some ethnic Swedes resented Ibrahimović for his connections to the immigrant population. People were claiming that Zlatan wasn't Swedish. A Swedish citizen, sure, but not an ethnic Swede that should represent the country, the culture and the people. Because he did not fit the Swedish mold. He was too loud, too confident and too other. And yet he kept on scoring. For Ajax, Juventus, Inter, Barcelona, AC Milan, Paris Saint-Germain and Manchester United. 34 trophies, almost 600 career goals, and one of the greatest strikers of this generation. And slowly Sweden began to change. When Sweden opened their new national arena, they hosted England in an international friendly, and Zlatan scored all 4 goals in a 4-2 win. The first 3 were brilliant, but the 4th was impossible.
Det är inte helt otänkbart för nu är Johart ute och det blir mål! Det blir mål! Det är det värsta jag sett! Det är inte klokt!
Even the England fans applauded, and this was the moment where Sweden fully embraced Zlatan. And not just as a footballer, but as a symbol. Swedish teammate Kim Källström said, "Zlatan is a modern Swede who stands for the new Sweden. With foreign-born parents and certain problems in society, he can hopefully unify the country in a good way. Football builds bridges." A modern Swede and a new Sweden. Journalist Joanna Frandén wrote, "Zlatan stands for a new Swedishness. There were many generations of immigrants before him, but he became the symbol for people with an immigrant background. He represents a big group who are raised in Sweden, who speak other languages than Sweden at home, and who had problems identifying themselves with Sweden prior to Zlatan's breakthrough." Zlatan, even though he was born in Sweden, became the immigration story of Sweden. His success, personality and charisma made him the symbol of many things in Sweden. Zlatan changed what it meant to be Swedish, becoming the bridge between ethnic Swedes and immigrants, unifying them as one. But Zlatan retired from international football in 2023 at the age of 41. And Sweden without Zlatan is a different team. And at the World Cup qualifiers, Sweden finished last. In 6 games, 0 wins, 2 draws and 4 losses. By every measure, they failed. But there was a backdoor. In 2023, Sweden were relegated from Nations League B, but they topped their group in Nations League C in 2025. And that achievement secured them a playoff spot, despite the horrific qualifiers. Critics argued that this loophole allowed Sweden to qualify through the backdoor, raising concerns about fairness. Should a team that was unable to win a single qualifying match be at the World Cup? Because during the qualifiers, Sweden were disastrous, and sacking the then manager Jon Dahl Tomasson. And in came Graham Potter, former Brighton manager, former Chelsea manager and former West Ham manager. His Chelsea tenure was a disaster. He only lasted for 7 months, and his reputation was damaged. His career had stalled. Sweden was struggling, and Potter was struggling. A perfect match of mutual desperation. Sweden had lost 3 consecutive games without scoring when Potter arrived, but he had the playoffs. he had one last chance. And in the semi-final of the playoffs, Sweden faced Ukraine, and up stepped Arsenal striker Viktor Gyökeres to score a hat-trick. Sweden won 3-1 and were now in the playoff final. They were one game away from the World Cup. The opponent standing in the way was Poland. And in the 80th minute, the score being 2-2, it looked like extra time was coming. And the ball falls to Gyökeres.
Han kommer runt, han kommer in i straffområdet. Högre spelas helt bakom. Svensson skjuter. Bergvall skjuter. Bergvall, det är mål! Det är stolpe. Det är mål! Ja! Det är mål! Det är Gyökeres! Det är Gyökeres! Det är fast situation. Och Sverige är bara några minuter fram.
Sweden had done it. Through the backdoor, against all odds, for the first time since 2018. 32 years after digging for gold in America, Sweden are back at the World Cup in America. They qualified through the backdoor, finishing last in their groups with no wins. No Zlatan, Brolin, Dahlin or Ravelli. Just Graham Potter trying to rebuild his tarnished reputation. And Viktor Gyökeres trying to fill the void left by Zlatan. And now in 2026, Sweden returns. Not to dig for gold, but to dig for a new identity. Can Viktor Gyökeres take over the mantle from Zlatan? Can Graham Potter redeem himself? And can Sweden prove that without their greatest ever player, they are still worthy? Because critics say they don't deserve to be here, that they found their way through a loophole, finishing last and not winning a single qualifying game. But they are here. And you won't find anything if you don't start digging. So this summer, will Sweden find the gold they've been looking for as a national team that has everything to prove?